Hello, friends. Welcome to the Merry Corncrakes, the official podcast for the Corncrake magazine. And today we have a very special episode for you today because we are launching the L&A Catalogue. This has been something which the Corncrake team have been working on for many months. It has been a major undertaking involving many people within our sphere, and it is finally here. We're going to be launching it on stream tonight. We're going to be seeing it. We're going to be having some of the people featured in it. It's going to be a really great experience. And to kind of build up to that, I have a very special friend for the first half hour or so. Please let me welcome the one and only Simon Roberts. Hello, Simon. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad. Thank you very much. Good evening, Nathan. Good evening, chat. Very nice to be here. And I was immensely gratified that you chose to ask me to review ahead of stream this densely packed grimoire of effulgent mind forgings that has been created by a multifarious group of very luminously attractive and inventive artists and craftsfolk. So thank you very much for setting that up.
Oh, well, it's an absolute honor to have you on and a privilege. And before we get into things, why don't you just say a little bit about who you are and like your presence online for those who don't know you?
Yeah, I mainly hang around the Academic Agent channel, and we've been doing an extended series of reviews of the documentaries of Adam Curtis. And I pop in on other streams occasionally with Proper Horror Show and review and explore, empty out the interest in various, tropes of popular culture, whether it's, film or, essays, as we did last week on Freud's Uncanny. And generally, I have to say, I was discussing this with somebody yesterday. I'm more of an adaptive intellect than a creative one. I do like the sort of reviewing of culture and the interest in sort of shaking it out and seeing what we can find. But I would say I'm probably not an original creator. So I tend to just enjoy these kinds of things where we meander through and discuss the importance of them and the meaning of them.
I suppose that's actually something which is maybe endemic might be the too harsh a word, but it seems like the online space that we exist in, the YouTube sphere, where people are creating videos, which are video formats tend to be commentaries, and maybe it's a certain, because many of us have been trained in that at university and kind of criticism of something.
Yes.
Then we naturally tend towards that direction as a group. So it's quite unique or rare for there to be people who are the primary content creators, as it were, the people making art and literature and so on. They are the minority in this sphere, not the majority.
Yeah, and we welcome their on-Russian presence, as I've been seeing in the last couple of years. I was very much pleased to go to the exhibition that was hosted by Ferro and Friends, Fendervilliers and others in London, and just energized by the fact that there are people simply starting to create culture. This is what I've been screaming out for in my little corner of Twitter for a long time, that it's great to repossess cultural artifacts and reinterpret them and own them ourselves, because so much of the cultural discourse at the moment is taken up by kind of parsing the creators themselves and whether they align with what we believe or whether they express a political viewpoint. And I think it's this moment where we're starting to step beyond that into this space where, for instance, leftist culture, it's kind of activism fueled and it's agitprop and it's sort of disappearing into the unappealing sort of adult daycare kind of soft play dreck of propaganda, and it doesn't have any edge or seductiveness anymore. And we're trying to renew contact with our individual cultural bases, whether we're writers, artists, performers, and trying to look at this space where we can now begin to develop a praxis which is coming forward as the sort of political space is reconfiguring, as we're seeing. And there's, especially in the UK, a sense that in the next 4 years, we could do all sorts of interesting things to disrupt that sort of terra firma of old culture and begin to actually express something that is not the sort of boil in the bag populism that we see, and also re-establish the idea that culture itself is not a political mode as such. It can be infiltrated by politics and propaganda, but that it is an area of self-actualization that's important to inhabit in its own right, and give ourselves the sort of latitude and playfulness that it can afford.
I think that's exactly right. And just to pick up on something there, it's the I was reading a book by the psychologist Otto Rank not too long ago, and he made this case that actually art is the primary activity of human beings, insofar as, you know, when we dress ourselves, when we speak, when we do drawings of any kind, all of these activities have an artistic quality, an aesthetic quality, and to some extent that precedes everything else, because it is the expression of the self through these things which takes place, and so it's pre-political in a way. So he was saying actually this is more fundamental to us as humans, and so reconnecting with art is vital for us as to thrive, both as individuals and as communities. So I think you make a really great point there about how it's not just about being left or right or something like that, because that's trapped within the dialectic of today. It's actually moving beyond that and reintegrating ourselves with that aesthetic tradition, but for the present moment. And I think that's one of the things which really excites me at the moment within our scene, is that there are artists and authors who have that kind of vision, who aren't stuck in that kind of let's argue with each other, but okay, I want to make great art and go where it leads me.
Yes, and it feels very much like it's the right moment. I mean, as Eliot said, you know, to make an end is to make a beginning, and the end is where we start from. It feels like we're very much at the end of something culturally, as has been often commented. The last 25 years has been a sort of episode of cultural recursion and a kind of zombie-like staleness as we, you know, keep reiterating the same forms over and over again in at least popular culture, and I guess to some extent in high culture as well, which has been traduced, let's say, by being harnessed to various kinds of political discourses, mainly in the way that art is and a culture is funded and deployed. And what we're doing is trying to seek a relation. I mean, I don't want to sound too much like Roger Scruton, but get ourselves back into a relation with beauty, and in that act, not just in individuals, but as an act of a collective or shared resonance for things in life that are otherwise blocked by the bludgeoning effects of a complicated, managerially mediated reality and all the attendant social and personal dysfunction that comes with that.
So with that in mind, you have seen a preview of the catalogue. Why don't you tell us what it is and what your impressions are of it, and what, you know, how does that fit into what we've just been saying?
Well, it's startling to see the talent and beauty that's on display. To be frank, there are people who are obviously accomplished artists in their own right, coalescing, an amuse-bouche of great works, as yet to be expanded and unfolded in time to come. But there's a fantastic, colorfulness and efflorescence of vitality in the work that I'm seeing in the catalogue itself, and an interesting capacity for a range of temperament and styles in people. I mean, I won't sort of invidiously point out any one particular artist, but I was looking at one particular artist a little earlier, and I was astonished by the range within their production of the way that they had absorbed historical and traditional styles, but also with a flexibility. And in fact, it's sort of I don't want to say a conformity, but a closeness and an understanding of historical styles, such that it was fluid enough for them to be able to do something new with it. And to some extent, there's always a danger with culture of creating that recursive pastiche and that sort of comfort zone that people have. But again, this and these are beginnings. to forge some kind of, for me, what I yearn for, which is a scene of some kind, a collectivity where people can go. And to me, the next step is to go towards those IRL moments where these things can be, savored, with company, and expanded, if possible, into other areas of the arts, especially that interest me, like performance and things like that. So there's fantastically detailed works, whether it be illustrative works. I mean, some incredible illuminated manuscripts. There are clearly literary works there as well. Fantastically, detailed pen and ink drawings, which I kind of love, because I used to do these sorts of things when I was a teenager, and I gave up on it. And textile works, works of historical resonance in terms of there's some wonderful sort of military painting, which I kind of like as well. But a certain kind of sense of launch of something here that is giving people a variety of modes to begin with, which echo some of the if you like, traditionalist themes that have propagated in our sphere, with that crucial thing that artists and creators have to have, is to transcend the source material and create the new and take us onwards. And so that's the point at which we're at. And, it's a great start to dive in and choose something. I mean, not everything is going to appeal to every single person who sees the works in the catalogue, but you can at least say there's no loss of quality here in terms of the productions that are being made. And part of it is that moment where we have to kind of thrust ourselves in and perhaps take advantage and say, yes, I'm going to buy a piece of art. I'm going to read a different kind of book. I'm going to, even wear, a fabulous garment that I noticed before we came on. You were wearing one of the works featured in this particular catalogue. So, I mean, it's all great from my point of view. It's all where it needs to go. It's all about, as I've said before, and no disrespect to the New Culture Forum, who I've mentioned in conversation with people. That's a great project in its own right, for its own purposes. But my sense was that not enough people were creating new culture. And that's what I want to actually see created. I know, for instance, they're having a literary event towards the end of May in London, which is great. And I want to see that built on with all sorts of other events, with exhibitions, with installations, with performances, with technologically mediated forms of culture as well. So we actually preoccupy ourselves and immerse ourselves more with that than with the endless discourse, the endless conversation and review of the slop cycle, the news cycle, and all of the kind of miserable stuff that goes with that, which is just demoralizing. And I think that it's kind of come at a moment which is right, because I think a lot of people have quite quit a lot of this stuff as well. They are not necessarily stepping out of social media. It's nice to have people on Twitter, but I think people in their real lives are starting to say, we need something more. We can't go on like this. So we do have to fill that space now. And you've got, at least 4 years before a general election, if you look at it in those kind of bald political terms. So you might as well be getting on with something else and creating new worlds. And I even see there was a book with the theme of Anglo-futurism, which is something that I don't know much about, which sort of intrigues me. But at least it's forging, a different intellectual sphere than has been, heretofore recognised. And that's the thing of starting modes of culture as well, that people can begin to build on and reinvent if they need to. So it's all to the good.
Well, let's bring in one of the artists who has been involved in this project, none other than good friend of the channel, Ferro. Hello, Ferro. How are you doing, sir?
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me on, Nathan. And
not at all. Not at all, Ferro. We've just been talking about why this catalogue is important, what it's bringing to this sphere. So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts, Ferro. What do you think about it?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, because Simon sort of mentioned about like spaces and promotion, etc., as kind of an important part of the culture engine. Also, I think it's a very good observation, not to throw shade at them as well, Simon. The new culture forum guys. I think that literature thing is the first thing they've ever done culturally since I've known them in 5 years. So I guess, a bit late to the party, but still, I think that's good.
Definitely no shade. I'm just impatient, as I always am.
It's just a funny name. They should just talk about like new. I don't found
new intellectual forum. I don't know.
Yes, yeah, maybe I was going to be a little bit crueler than that, Nathan. Anyway,
we've got to be polite on this stream. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
What does it take to make a successful art economy? I think economy is the wrong word. Maybe kind of like ecosystem is a little bit fancier. And I think you need obviously the artists and the people making stuff. You need the patrons, but you also need viewers as well. And I have a very annoying position, which is that I think that art is simultaneously an elitist thing, but it's also popularist at the same time, in the sense that you need that kind of elite patron to kind of push things further, etc. But at the same time, art's purpose has a greater, almost universal plan to it at the same time. But counter to that, it's only appreciated by the people that spend the time on it. So you know what I'm saying? In the same way that you can look at a painting and say that's nice, but you need to have watched the entire of the St. George Day on the Nathan Hood stream to understand the true meaning of the references to the Red Cross Night or something like that within a painting. You can approach art superficially and also in that kind of in-depth nature. So that's why I think it's very interesting. And so when Shield mentioned about the catalogue, I was very interested, because not only is it kind of creating a space for like artists to showcase themselves and to show some of the things they've been working on. I mean, this is the closest thing to like a virtual exhibition that we've had so far. It's a curated list of people that have created stuff that want to kind of showcase it. But then I like that it's both. It has that kind of both elitist elements, and the fact that the people who are going to be buying, hopefully, will be kind of elite patrons in that sense. But even if you don't have any spare cash to buy, the catalogue in itself as this moment of kind of showcasing what's out there is accessible to everyone, and it's a great way of seeing what's happening and pulling people together. I think so much of creating the ecosystem is about building up connections and knowing people and encouraging people. And I think the catalogue has a very specific purpose that no one else is doing right now. One last thing I'll maybe say, I don't want to rant too much, but in the past, there were specific places where people would go to discuss art and showcase it. You've all heard of the Royal Academy Summer Show. Used to be the place to go. Now it's a bit more of like I don't know, a bit of a slop fest these days, if I'm honest with you, just a bit of an overabundance. But roll back even, I don't know, 50 years, it would be showcasing the greatest art of the time. Or think about the French salons, etc., where rich the wives of the rich businessmen would showcase all of the kind of lovely art that they've got. And I again, yes, this is not a grand exhibition. This is not a salon, but it is a smaller but still powerful step forward in that direction that no one else has done. And I'm really keen for this to be established as a regular thing that kind of goes out and that people look forward to and they want to contribute for and also want to make work for at the same time. Like for this, because it's the first piece, it's always going to be something like, what do I have lying around right now that I can kind of showcase? But I'm hoping, maybe we'll do something special. I'll do something special next time it comes around and pull something together. So I think it's very exciting. And like I said, I think it's for people who are interested in art and interested in buying art, for sure. It's got that sales element. But if you want to be educated, if you're just like, oh, I'm interested in art, I want to get, I feel like culture is missing in my education. Just buying them, getting access to the magazine and taking a look through is going to give you that. This is going to start you on that journey as well. It's got that accessibility and educational value to it too.
I was going to say as well, I think the possibilities of cross-pollination, as it were, amongst the artists and writers within this catalogue, to me, is one of the exciting things, because it can sometimes feel in an online sphere that everybody's doing their thing and it's kind of independent of everybody else. And that's not totally true, because people are reading each other's work and so on. But bringing it together into a common space, such as the catalogue, allows for that more kind of direct exchange or sense of we're part of something together. And okay, I'm looking through this catalogue. Oh, that's an approach I've not tried before. Maybe I'll do that, or maybe I'll go and talk to this person who's in the catalogue, because I want to learn more about what they're doing and how it can impact my practice. So I think that aspect to me is an exciting thing as well, that it can lead to further developments within individuals and in what the scene, as Simon was calling it, can produce. It might bring some collaboration with that.
Yeah, that's a really good point as well. I've been doing this series on my channel about interwar art. So looking at the Royal Academy, sorry. So looking at the Royal Academy Summer Show from 1920 to 1940. And what's interesting is that someone will come up with a motif or a subject one year, and then the next year, like 2 or 3 other artists will then riff off that and do something similar or do another take on that. Although sometimes it gets a little bit out of hand. So, for example, the theme of Paris and the Golden Apple. There's about 25 paintings, I swear, during that time period, and it's sort of like, but it's funny because you can see the first one, and then it's 3, and then everyone's just churning one of them out a year. But like obviously that's interesting from like a subject perspective or whatever. But also I think that's that like art is simultaneously individual but also collective, in the sense that artists have like powerful senses. They simultaneously kind of pick up the mood of a nation and the spirit of the time, but also prophesy what is to come in the future as well. But part of that is, I think, the collective spirit, and like the reason why there are art movements is because several people have the same, excuse I won't like this, the same vibes at the same time. That they all feel something's happening and there's a certain direction going on. That like art is not like random. Yes, it's individualistic in the fact that there are chosen people and there are technically great people, but I think at the same time it is one of movements and harmonies, and part of that is connecting with other people at the same time. So I'm really hoping that people will see some stuff and be like, okay, yeah, I'm going to read that and do a illustration for it, or be inspired to do a painting, and vice versa.
And that level of engagement and dialogue between artists is something that is very much of interest to me. When you talk about cross-pollination there, Nathan, I especially feel that we do have this period of dangerous cultural stagnancy where, as Ferro is alluding to, there is culture and art as a kind of project of sort of neoliberal individualist recuperation. Yeah, as experienced by oneself. One downloads the latest film or the latest album, listens to it on one's phone, sequestered, and there is a sort of gaping chasm here where there's a cultural bandwidth going begging for some generation of a real counterpoint to that, stultifying, placid culture that's been in recursion for the best part of 25 years, as I say, where the reduction of life is just to a dull miasma of populist noise that we're encountering. So in a way, although I was hopeful for the political populism of the age to kind of give us something interesting, of course it's going to become a sort of predictable backcloth of a certain kind of, bulldog and spitfire nationalism, so to speak. And in that space, there's an ability to make a rent in that backcloth, and disintermediate all that kind of cultural bunting which is going to be rolled out in a very hackneyed way, and create some interesting disruptions, in the way that the left used to do, perhaps. There's no shame in taking that kind of radical approach, as well as reinforcing the merits and verities of traditional skill sets, which I'm pleased to say are flourishing there. I mean, we just need someone who can do medieval stonework now, as far as I can see, because that's the one thing that was lacking in the catalogue. But I'm sure Ferro will have myriad abilities in this respect.
No way I'll do touch that. But again, the thing is that what amazes is that there are still people out there, and again, part of stuff like this as well is it acts like a lighthouse for other people. Like imagine all those kind of lost souls thinking, it's just me, and I really love traditional forms or etc. I'm not really down with what's happening right now. Oh, actually, there's a whole lot of other artists that are doing something interesting at the same time. The other thing I wanted to say as well, just on Simon's point, is that I don't think the art establishment in Britain has ever been so conservative. And it's just that's interesting to me, because what they've been doing is exactly the same thing for at least the last 25 years. And I think you could argue even since the 60s and 70s, really, is a regurgitation both physically in terms of what the art establishment produces and what do they champion, but also ideologically. And again, I think now is the time for new and big ideas. And also, I think the reason why the word disrupt came to Simon is because the establishment is a fortress. The artistic establishment is a fortress that doesn't really want to change, that doesn't really want to innovate. It's weirdly lost. It's something that was, if you know anything about the history of it, was founded on experimentation and trying to be interesting, but they sort of run out. Really, it's like they've really petered out in terms of energy, and that often when you speak to some other artists within our milieu, they use the word vitality, and I think that's really interesting. Why is vitality so important in today? Well, it's because it's the opposite of deadness, and that's what you see. Again, if you like, just check out if you check out who is the president of the Royal Academy right now, it's just dead, boring art that could have been in a show like 40 years ago. And again, I'm not asking for novelty all the time, etc., but more just want to point out that they simultaneously claim to be pioneers and innovators, and look at these shocking things, but I find them the most banal and boring things that you'll ever seen, totally devoid of anything interesting and new, really. So, yeah, we are fighting the conservatives on this front as well.
Well, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for because we're about to launch the link live. So can I just say thank you both to Simon and Farah for joining. I think you've set up the importance of the catalogue very nicely, and I hope that you have a good evening, and thank you for your time.
Great pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So now it is my deep pleasure to invite on the person who is all behind the catalogue. It is Shield Maiden. Hello, Shield Maiden. How are you doing?
Hello. I am in good spirits today.
This is excellent to hear, as you should be, And let's just get straight into things. So there are two places that the catalogue is going live. That is correct. There is, firstly, the Etsy page. Now, what can people get on the Etsy page?
So Etsy is live now. If you want to purchase the catalogue, you can go on there right now and order one. And
this is a print version of the catalogue, right?
Yes, it's the printed version, and you'll see a few photos from a few different pages, so you can see what it looks like. Because obviously, it looks a bit different printed than it does, in a PDF online. So you'll be able to see a bit better what it will look like in print.
So let me bring it up so we can have a look at it, because this is very exciting. And the links are below in the stream description, so you'll be able to go and see this there. So let me share the page. Yes, so we have the L&A catalogue. Lovely here. £5 sterling. Plus shipping. So
yeah, the shipping is going to vary based on what country you're in, but yeah, the catalogue itself is just £5.
So let's go through the images. So we've got a lovely front cover here, and I see that's also your profile picture for tonight.
Yeah, so this was done by Alexander Adams.
Yes, and he's one of the featured artists, isn't he?
Yes, and if you like this front cover picture, you can even purchase it because it is for sale.
Mm-hmm. And then if we go down, we've got let's see. Yes, is that showing on the screen? I hope so.
For me, I can only see the shop.
Ah, right. Here we go. Sorry.
Oh yeah, that's better. Oh yeah, I can see now. Yeah, good.
Yes, so we've moved on to the next photo. So why don't you tell us a little bit about this one?
Well, Edward White is better known as King Emperor Penguin. And he recently had T. Meadows, the man who helped create this catalogue. He did this, you see the woman in red. He actually did this for a cover for that book. He got a new cover on his book. So it's a really good picture and was done just in time for us to put it into the catalogue.
Yes.
One of the other books he made he's written a few children's books, and that's the one you can see on the right. There's a series there of 3 books.
Yes, the trilogy, the High Realm trilogy, which I can thoroughly recommend. I've read, and it's really good. It's really good. I won't say any more. If you read the catalogue entry for it, it goes into it. So then we move on to yes, these are actually Ferro's contributions to the catalogue. Ferro, who was just on, he has this wonderful tagline: "Art is life, and so living should be an aesthetic experience." And so he has designed these beautiful coats that can be bought. Yes, did you want to say something, Shield Maiden?
Well, I was about to ask, do you feel your life right now is an aesthetic experience, seeing as you're wearing what a Ferro does?
Yes, absolutely. I feel like a walking, Michelangelo sculpture in terms of my dress and aesthetic quality now. And it not only is a beautiful piece of clothing, which is a joy to wear and very uplifting as a process, as a consequence. It's also very, like, it's really comfortable. It's this lovely fabric inside that makes it just a delight to wear. So I think all round it's just wonderful. And I should say as well, you can see some of the designs on the screen. My coat has peacocks on it, the peacock streams, and this has got various mythological, theological symbolism, and all of the coats have some kind of symbolism going on, transcendent symbolism. So it's very elevating, the artwork. It's not just superficial pretty. It's actually saying something important about the human soul and meaning in life and so on.
Yeah, that's how clothes should be made, so you can wear them for a long time and they're not just a temporary fashion piece that goes out of style in less than a year.
Mm-hmm. You become the fashion style forever. At least that's what I tell myself when I look at myself in the mirror with this on. Then let us move to the next one. So we've got two entries here.
Yeah, so the illumination is done by Manuel Mitsui, and he if you go to his website, he's got a huge amount of all kinds of art. You can buy posters. He even does his illumination on vellum if you want to be that fancy. He can sell font, and then I believe he has there's a website called Spoonflower, and if you want to buy his pattern but on like a cushion cover or something, you can buy it there. So he's a really good artist, and the good thing about purchasing a catalogue is that you'll see in real life what it's like. Obviously his posters and art is better quality than the pages of a catalogue, but seeing the art in person gives you an idea of what it's like to actually have a piece, and the colours show up better and everything, as opposed to just looking at something, on a screen. So yeah, his work is really great. And then the other one there, you can see Sandra. She actually illustrated a book recently for Old Sovereign Publishing, and I believe one of the guys from there is going to come on the stream soon. But she also sells some of her art in the form of posters, and then she has some original pieces as well in the catalogue also. But that particular picture right there, I really like. It's quite simple, but I don't know, it's very impactful at the same time. So that's why I chose it for her color, because it just looks so good,
So let us move to the other link, because time is pressing, and so the other place that people can access the Corncrake, if they, you can buy the physical copy of the L&A, but if you want a digital copy, where do you go?
So you want to go to the corncrakemag.com. You want to go to the same website as for the regular magazine. And we've made a new homepage, and you'll be able to see the catalogue right there on the page. And then you just click on it. It'll right away exactly like the catalogue itself opens. And then you can just scroll through at your leisure. And obviously the links work as well. Whereas obviously in the printed version, there's instructions for Google things. But here, these are live links. If you like someone's work, just click on something and away you go straight to their website or wherever they're selling things from.
Which is great. So everybody can go and check it out now and look at the catalogue as we're talking about it, and join in with us in doing that process. So yes, you can see it here, and I totally agree with you. I think even on the screen, but especially in the printed version, it is like having a work of art in your hands. I have really felt that, and it gives you a real sense of the quality of the artists and writers involved, but also is just a very lovely thing to have, to own as your own, as it were. It's an aesthetically pleasing catalogue in that regard.
Yeah, definitely.
So, in terms of that, then, what inspired you to do the catalogue?
Well, it was like a bolt of lightning from the heavens, straight with the idea.
Mm.
The Corncrake itself does is it has short stories from many different authors, so it's a place for people to find a new audience, and therefore grow. But the catalogue's actually along the same vein. It's a collection of different people showing a few of their wares, and hopefully, I really do hope a lot of people will come and check it out. And even if they don't purchase something right away, hopefully they'll remember the artist, remember the art, and maybe in the future they'll buy something or commission something or buy a book or that sort of thing. So yeah, collecting because everyone is so scattered. Everyone's in their own little Substack or their own little section of Twitter, or maybe they're not even online. And some of them don't have shops and some don't do Etsy. It's so scattered, and as you see, all of these people are good at what they're doing, and they all should have more recognition and they should all have more sales. So by putting them together in a catalogue with clear instructions of how you can buy the stuff, that means that this is just a good thing.
Well, I think I can speak for most people who are watching this, if not everybody who is watching this and will watch this, in saying a big thank you for doing that and a big congratulations on bringing this to fruition. You have done something really beneficial for lots of artists and writers and for the audiences, and so we owe you a debt of gratitude for that.
Make sure, though, you don't forget T. Meadows. He is the graphics advisor and he helps make all of this look pretty. So he needs lots of thanks to him.
Oh, he does. And speaking of this distinguished fellow, why don't we bring him in? Let's bring him in now.
Excellent.
Hello, Mr. T. Meadows. Thank you
Good
for your
evening,
hard
good evening.
work. Thank you for all your hard work on this catalogue. Why don't you say a little bit about what you did for it?
Oh, thanks for having me on. Do you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yeah, we can.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, to me, this was kind of like working on the artist segment that we usually do on the Corncrake, where I usually do my usual nitpicking. Shieldmaiden usually does her curating of the works. Can we have this and this and this? And then I come in as a snob and peruse through everything, a bit like a kid in a candy store. It's like, yes, this looks good, this looks good, this looks good. Let's put that in here, and so on. And then in this catalog, I've got to do that on a grand scale. It's been a most enjoyable experience.
Well, that is fantastic, and we'll come to what you actually have specifically included in a moment or two. But I also want to welcome in another contributor to the catalogue, somebody who has supported the Corncrake and Shieldmaiden's activities right from the very beginning of her online presence. It is Liquid Swan. Hello, Liquid. How are you doing?
Hey, how's it going there? I'm hoping my connection's good.
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Awesome. Perfect.
Yes. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about what you do, and then we can have a look at what you've contributed here.
Well, I write short stories for Corncrake once in a while, and I've done a book myself, which is mostly just a collection of essays from my Substack. I'm currently working on another book. It's fiction, but it's not quite there yet. But yeah, that's basically what I've been doing lately. I do conferences. I've been to a couple in the States. Hopefully, I'll be able to go to a WITAN at some point. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a creative outlet to get my mind off everyday, work Monday to Friday sort of thing.
I mean, that's great. And this is your specific contribution, right? The essays on Western decline. Is this what you were mentioning about your Substack essays?
Yeah, that's the hardcover. That picture, there's actually a place in Iceland that I took that picture called Kristavakarkirkja, and it's like a church that's from the 1800s. It burned down in 2010, but they rebuilt it. But it just was so ethereal to be in that spot, and so I'm happy I got that picture. But yeah, so I put that on there. There's also a soft cover, but I think that one looks nicer.
What was it about that cover which you felt was the fitting for this collection of essays?
It sort of reminds me of the past and how people used to venerate God in some sense, and it sort of connects that idea with just the wide open nature. And Iceland itself is a place that European man most recently settled without anybody else there. So it's sort of an expression of Western expansion, sort of like not the last gasp of civilization, but the last gasp of, say, medieval civilization before we moved on to the New World and industrialization.
I mean, in some ways, it's interesting because, I mean, it might be superficial, but I've known people who have traveled to Iceland, and large parts of it have been able to kind of carry on without the interference of the modern world in many respects. So in some ways, because of its extreme geography and harsh living conditions, in a way, the only kinds of people who could survive there were the kinds who wouldn't go through modernity. So it's a strange, in a way, it's almost immune to it in some respects.
Yeah, you can't, like, you can cross through the middle, but it's like going through a different planet.
Yeah,
like you couldn't live there. You have to you can go through it, but you can't stay too long because you'll run out of supplies. There's nothing. Maybe you can have fresh water. That's about it, and rocks. So.
It does sound like something from a Norse saga, the land of the giants or something.
Yeah, it is quite beautiful. The first time I went there, I was like fell in love with it. So I've always been trying to think of a way to get back. Maybe it'd be there permanently at some point, but.
And so
it sort of straddles the old world and the new too, right?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
I was just going to say, you've mentioned briefly about the essays, but could you just say, if you can, in a brief way, what are the essays about beyond just?
Yeah, good question. My main goal with those, so the essays were written in a different order, so it's sort of an exploration of like my, I don't know, intellectual growth, but. What I wanted when I put this together, I put it together in like more of a logical order of like where you should start in your thinking to where you're ending. And my goal is sort of to like progress or advance forward our ideas in a way that could be sort of understandable by most people. And I kind of push into the Caesar idea in like the last the last chapter is kind of special, but the 4 before that are all about sort of how to sort of form or manifest a Caesar in our civilization, so we can kind of get out of this ennui. But there's a lot of stuff in there. I go into economics. I go into explorations on like traditional values and stuff like that. But the Caesar thing was sort of my goal.
So there's a bit of something. If you're interested in different topics or a variety, then this is going to stimulate you. It's not just one thing all the time, and it's not just a series of black pills by the sound of it. There is actually a hopeful ending to it.
Yeah, it's about like getting past this era, and I've gotten reviews from people that aren't in our sphere and normies, and they seem to enjoy the essays too. So. I'm hoping people can get something out of it, or it's sort of easy reading too. Like some of it's a little complicated, but most of it's pretty easy. Yeah.
Well, that's super. That's super. I want to turn now to T Meadows' contributions. But feel free, guys, to chip in. So if we scroll up, I think I want to start with one thing which because you got to have two things in separate places. We have on the very second page this beautiful cormorant that you have produced. Do you want to tell us a little bit about this piece?
Well, thank you. Glad you appreciate it. No, it's a subject that I've been quite fascinated with. Yeah, at least last 2 years. Every once in a while, I visit my old country. I live abroad, and then I always go for a swim out in the fjord. And very often on my way back home, I see cormorants drying their wings in the sun. It's a fascinating thing to see, and at least the last year, I've seen it a little bit as like a spirit animal. And one way you can like compare it to another picture of the same concept of riding the tiger, because these are specific birds that don't have that oil coating on their feathers that make them float like swans and ducks and so on. And they dive into the depths of the sea to get food, and then afterwards they need to sit there and dry their feathers. And yeah, I think it's basically nature's illustration of often what it's about, what it feels like observing and being a bit discontent living in the world of mass and scale in which we live, because actually being aware of it can really feel like a cold shower. It's very uncomforting, but it can also be rewarding. But as soon as you get back up of it, you kind of need to sit and dry for a while, not in order to get a cold, and not to let the cold depths of you chill you for life, so to speak.
Yeah. No,
Does that make sense?
I totally see that, and I just looking at this image, one thing that struck me is, and because I live near a colony of cormorants who I often see with their wings outstretched, drying off in the sun too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that thing of, it's on the rock above the swirling, rushing currents, which are here. The sea is very in motion, but this is standing above it, strong, resolute, drying its wings, standing against. Even the silhouette thing is kind of standing against, right? So I can really see that in this image that you've produced.
Standing against it, resolute, completely in jet black, absorbing all the light, and keeping all the heat.
Yes. This is a strong image. This is a good one. Good one. And
thanks.
It's
glad you like it.
Starting at €60. So guys, get your bids in now. Get your bids in. But there is another place that we can find you.
And in those €60, shipping is included.
Shipping is included. Then we have Radloot playing cards prints. Tell us more.
Well, what I'm showcasing here is a deck of playing cards that I made that is themed after Norse mythology. Because one thing that often annoys me a bit with art, that it's a bit of a passive endeavor, and I've been really guilty of cultivating passivity because I used to work in TV animation. So I'd like to make something that you can pick up with you, when you can actually be social with, and you can actually use, you can be active and social, which still uses illustration and aesthetics. And also a really good thing that I like about playing cards is that it's an old form of game that seems to be more and more dying out, because it seems like more and more types of game are being adapted to what I call what we see as a Netflix model. Everything just needs to be a subscription, which I think is a very perverse tendency, that you make a subscription service out of something as necessary and vital as just human contact and interacting with each other.
Well, I think you're exactly right, and it's actually across various areas, activities which involve meeting people in real life are dying out or declining. And so this sort of playing cards, which for many people in the past was a regular activity down the pub or the social club or wherever, it's not something which is promoted on the same level anymore, or if it is, it's play bet poker online or whatever. Whereas actually,
Exactly.
you lose something in that, and I think what's part of that is touching an object which has an aesthetic that has been designed and has a certain style and beauty to it, and your deck of cards does that, right? And what I love about it is you are you're tying it in with the traditional, king, queen, jack, and I think your choice of image reflects that, but then you've done it in a new way. It's not just copying what's gone before. It's a unique and quite striking style of design for these cards.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you think so. So
Well,
you mentioned online bet poker, and one thing that kind of puts me off about those, especially their own merchandise that you can buy, is their extremely utilitarian design, where all the illustrations are basically stamp sized, and then you have large numbers and suits. So it just becomes like a piece of held statistics. So, for example, the old aesthetics of all the old medieval card motifs has just become become a bagatelle, a detail, something negligible. So it's just become this utilitarian piece of paper for squandering money online.
Yes.
So I wanted to go in the opposite direction and anchor it more culturally and aesthetically to make it more of a cultural experience. Which is why I went through and made the pips myself. Made a separate typography for the numbers and letters based on the shape language of runes.
And I suppose there's a broader point that to be made about that as well, in terms of, if we think of like the arts and crafts movement and so on, there was this emphasis that art isn't only beautiful paintings or sculptures and so on. It's not just something which is purely aesthetic, as it were. It actually can or should be a factor in everyday objects or things which are used for a different primary function. They should also have a beautiful quality to them. And the fact is, through industrialization and so on, the focus on perfect standard, mass-produced, leads to the decline of that in our society. It's all about efficiency first, and one might even argue it's intentionally uglified in various contexts. So actually, something like this is saying no to that. That actually there is a place for the beautiful, for the aesthetic within a game between friends.
Yes,
and I would argue the coat that Ferrer's design is another example of that.
Absolutely. Indeed.
So in terms of then the catalogue itself, do you guys have any thoughts on its significance, or what you would like to see come from this in the future?
I think my thoughts on that has already been sufficiently summed up by the lovely intro that we got, and also better articulated. So I leave that at that. I will just say that it was quite a joy to work on it, because in general, one of my favorite pieces of the Corncrakes magazine, as I said, is the artist segment, and this was on a large scale. I was really happy to be able to contribute.
I think this is a significant advancement in terms of everyone that's involved in this movement to access their stuff, like access to all these people. Because maybe Dunbar's number kind of limits you to how many people you can even remember, really, unless you're really pushing yourself. And having a little magazine like this is awesome. I heard about this coming up in the back end, but by a couple of months ago. I wasn't expecting this, and it looks amazing.
And what things do you both have planned for your own activities in the future? Liquid, you've mentioned a possible book that you're writing at the moment.
Yeah, that's funny. I'm about halfway done the rough draft, and was actually talking with Steve Meadows about this because I really like his art and his cards, so I'm hoping to be able to snag him to do the art for the book as well. What do you think, T?
Oh, I'd be happy to do that. Personally, I'm working on a series of prints based around the sea, more cormorants, and also more the motif of cliffs and diving and going into the ocean.
Both of these sound absolutely fantastic, and I'm sure. I mean, I'm not the editor. I cannot really say this. I shouldn't really be saying this, Shield Maiden, but I am sure that anything which is published in the future in this year is eligible for the next catalogue. That's correct, right?
Yes, if the gods smile upon me and allow me to make another catalogue for 2026, then yes, anything made anytime in 2025 applies. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So we may well see these appearing in the next catalogue, which is a tantalizing prospect. And also I think as we heard earlier, a call to action. You know, people can think consciously then about it. Okay, hopefully there'll be a catalogue in 2025. Let's say it's around the same time. I'll try and get my thing out for around then. So it's a good kind of marker in the year now, which is helpful. Do you guys have any last comments you want to make?
I'm happy to work with all you guys. It's been great the last couple of years. Very proud of you, all your work, and thanks for having me.
I would say go out there and give your best friend a hug.
Oh well, those are both great comments and good advice. So thank you both, and it is very much appreciated for your time. I will let you go now and enjoy your evening, and we'll catch up again soon.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you. You too, guys.
Yeah, see ya.
So we have our next guests, and I'm going to welcome them on now. Let me do a little kind of teaser by moving the catalogue to the right place, so then we can have a nice image for our next guest. While I'm doing that, Shield Maiden, is there anything that you wanted to kind of, I've not asked you about, that you wanted to comment on thus far?
Oh, I'm just sitting here like a proud mother hen looking at, this catalogue. Because I've been working on this for months now, obviously not straight, off and on, but, this is hours of work. And obviously I'm very grateful for everyone for sending their work in and trusting me to do a good job with portraying it. But yeah, I'm just here clucking over it, as it were.
As you should do. Well, let me get our guests on now. So, firstly, I would like to welcome from Old Sovereign Publishing, George. Hello, George. How are you doing? You're muted, I'm afraid, George. You need to unmute yourself.
Classic. There we are. Can we hear me?
There we are.
Yeah,
How are you doing?
I'm very well. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
It's a real pleasure to have you on. It's a real honor, and we're very delighted that you were able to make the time for us. We'll get into Old Sovereign Publishing in a moment, but I just want to welcome our other guest for this segment, and that is the wonderful, the only Philip Wortman. Hello, Philip. It's good to see you again. How are you doing?
Hello. Thanks for having me. I'm doing well.
It's great to have you, and people may know you from the channel already because you've been on a few times. You're a familiar face, whereas George, you're a new guest on this channel. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself, George, and what you've contributed to the catalogue?
A little bit about me. So I am one of the two directors of Old Sovereign Publishing. We also have Gabriel Gigliotti. So I'm actually based in the UK. Gabriel was based out of California. We kind of came together and set up Old Sovereign Publishing in really the beginning of 2023. and it took a little bit of time to get everything completely together. We didn't actually launch our first book for pre-order until kind of the beginning of 2024, but it's been a good ride since then, and we have launched 4 titles. We've got 2 more coming in the coming months, and I guess for us, and for pretty much for me at least as well, was that Gabriel was an illustrator by trade. He's been doing that for probably the last 20 years or so. For myself, my own background is somewhat unrelated to that, but I did spend a year studying as a student of the late Sir Roger Scruton, and spent a lot of time in the around his work on aesthetics, on art, on culture. Been a huge influence on me. And I think the 2 of us together really just wanted to bring something together where we could essentially bring beauty back to publishing, which I guess is a tagline, but also a platform where artists could come and actually contribute and illustrate their work in a way and in a format that kind of circumvented the more traditional methods of being able to exhibit your work, whether that's for a gallery or one of the other gate-kept elements within, I guess, the modern cultural establishment, which will allow new artists to come through, which is essentially, I think, what we all need, is new artists to come through, deliver new art, new cultural experiences, represent it in a way that speaks to people in this generation. And we've attempted to do that with timeless classics and reinventing them for a new audience. There's people, of course, in this catalogue, in this magazine, that are just creating things, carte blanche, ex nihilo, and trying to deliver new cultural experiences. And I'm here tonight because I'm just very keen to be a part of that. Very much appreciate you guys kind of putting this together and trying in what way you can to build a platform for new voices and new ways of doing things.
I mean, there's a definite synergy there, and I think that's something which has been coming out over the evening so far, is that there's lots of people who have that shared ambition and drive to bring beauty back to the arts, to literature, and so on, and a recognition that we all need to kind of find more opportunities or create more opportunities for each other and work together in those opportunities.
Well, there's an element of only by kind of doing things that you can kind of meet the people that brings things together. So when we started this, Gabriel and myself, we actually we didn't know anyone other than each other really who would want to do this, and now we're having this conversation with lots of other people on the stream, but also the artists that we've engaged with have introduced us to other artists. There's whole forums and networks of people that kind of coming together to try and do something different. I think there's an element where we might just be talking to ourselves in some ways, but I think that's slowly starting to expand and to grow. And with any vanguard, it has to start somewhere. So very much, I think that this could be part of that.
Exactly, and I just turning to your own specific publications. One thing before we actually talk about the ones in the catalogue is I think it's worth mentioning how you go about how you produce your books is worth talking about. So could you share a little bit about that?
Very much so. Yeah. And so everything that we do and everything we strive to do is aimed at things being done in a way it expresses aesthetics. So everything down to the choices of the paper we use, the artists that we commission to produce the illustrations to the work, through to the tannery that produce the leather for us, through to the binders who are small family business in Edinburgh, the business responsible for doing the leather books. The papers that go on the front of those leather books are made by hand by a lovely lady in Wiltshire. She's got quite a growing and slowly more established business. It's great to see her doing so incredibly well, actually. But she does everything she does by hand. We'll be putting some information, some content out there when we release the M.R. James book, because she's made a more custom variation for us with that with regards to something that kind of like speaks to that specific individual book. And every little element is done individually by craftsmen and brought together in such a way that we can provide the highest quality of manufacture that is capable of us to bring together. So I think a lot of people who are doing some of these things on here are doing things like themselves and bringing it together. You know, we are very much a company. You know, we are we have suppliers across the chain, and we bring all of this together, and you know, hopefully bring the best reading experience that we can to people, and you know, one that we're often very keen to say, one that will last, you know, genuinely a lifetime. You know, these books are literally put together in such a way that, you know, you would have to chuck them out the top floor of a block of flats to obliterate. But yeah, you know, it's really about kind of bringing all these particular elements together so that people can actually have something that they can value and feel that's worthwhile having. I think that's the only way that we'll, you know, eventually kind of cross over the things that we're doing into other cultural spheres, and by giving people those experiences where they look at this Vanguard as being the place where actually this is where amazing things are being done.
I think added to that as well is that because this might be an assumption on my part, but it seems to me because these are very specially created works and they involve a lot of careful labor to produce them, they have a limited print run. So that, you know, it's not like you're thousands and thousands of these editions. Actually, there's a number that are available, but that in a way that also adds to the experience for me, because I've managed to get my hands on a copy, and it's like, okay, I have one of the few in the world, you know, of, you know, let's say 100 of this beautiful book, and that's a unique experience which I'm willing to pay more for because I know how great this work is. So I think that's an added element to what you're doing.
So very much so. I mean, the current leather runs are not quite 100, so it's even less than that. Actually, we're selling more on the cloth bounds, and you know, the reason we did that was to give more people an opportunity to buy those books, to have access to this without, you know, necessarily having the ability to pay that. But these print runs, we can increase those in the future. Everything is made by hand, so you know, when we put something back out there, it will take a long time. So if you don't buy now, you might not actually get a chance to buy that book for another year, maybe even 18 months. So I will just put that out there. Every single book, as you mentioned, is hand numbered. So we send them to a calligrapher who essentially numbers your book for you. And you know, some people who have bought every single one so far and will continue to do so will get the same number. They can build that as part of their collection. So yeah, again, it really is just making sure that every little detail is as perfect as we can make it. You know, we are learning many things as we go along. I think every book that we produce is better than the one that we produced before. But you know, from the very beginning, the intention is to give everyone the best experience possible. And as I said, you know, everything from the leather is produced by a tannery in West Lothian. They get the whole goat, strip it, then they they press it out, they dye the leathers, and they send that to the bookbinder, who uses that to create the spines. I've already mentioned about the papers on the front. You know, every little detail is important, and you know, we try to make these the most beautiful books that you can get. If you know, not trying to plead any kind of poverty or anything like that, but there's a sense in which that because of that, the profit margins are tiny. You really can only produce this kind of work if you're willing to pay for the manufacturing costs of it, and we really are trying to make it as accessible as possible. Any money we do make essentially just goes into the next project, and that's where we are with things at the moment. You know, and that may change, and then hopefully it will change. But for now, we're very much doing it for you know, the love of wanting to do something like this, for the joy that we've seen it give so far, and for all the artists that we've met and continuing to meet that are genuinely producing some brilliant work for Old Sovereign Publishing. I feel genuinely proud that I can say that we are commissioning people, many people that you've actually got in the catalogue, you know, paying them real money to actually produce this work, and then having a finished product at the end that they can forever then say that they've produced that. So yeah, it's that's the main thing at the moment. My intention is, if that goes well enough, then everything else will come in its own time and as its own reward, if you like. But for now, it's very much a case of building this from the ground up, completely bootstrapping it. And yeah, I'm incredibly proud of what we've done so far. So hopefully everyone else is appreciative of it. And
quite rightly, you should be proud of it. It's a magnificent achievement. We're just because time's moving on. Could you just say? Could you just give a little brief overview of the three things that you've got in this catalogue?
Yeah, sure. Of course, the first one, the top one, is the edition of Black Beauty that we produce. There are a front cover, of course, was also produced by Alexandra Ronsha, who's in the magazine, in the catalogue as well. She also produced 10 ink illustrations and 3 watercolor illustrations for this edition. We set it out in such a way with a typeset. I very much in the mind that people will be reading this to their children in many instances, and also for young people in themselves and being able to read it as well. So kind of set that out in terms of the typeset. Lord Jim is one of my favorite books of all time, and it's the reason why it probably went straight into the leather rather than a cloth bound edition. But I would encourage any person to read it. If you don't even read our edition, that's completely fine. Please pick up Lord Jim. It's one of those books that, particularly for young men trying to find your place in the world, to get the sense of what it is like to go to those kind of liminal places at the edge of the map and push yourself to achieve what you can achieve and do what you can do, and test yourself to your limits. So I would highly encourage that. And then at the bottom is the new release that will be coming out at the end of June. So it's the first volume of Plutarch's Lives. We've had the artist Samuel Wilde has produced 10 beautiful pastel illustrations for this edition. The sister volume on the Greeks will be coming out around sort of February, March time next year. That's actually being illustrated by Alexandra. We've taken on a new innovative design in terms of how to put this book together. It looks incredible. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what more you want to add from that, but Plutarch is. This book was written 2,000 years ago. This is the kind of work that Theodore Mommsen, when he wrote, his history of the ancient world, he actually he got the Nobel Prize in Literature. This is one of those works that would have, if it was written today, have been one of those great works of history, but also would have won the Nobel Prize in Literature. It's an incredible resource of stories and metaphors and analogies, and I mean, it's essentially the place where Shakespeare, found most of the characterization for a whole number of his plays, from Mark Antony and Coriolanus and many others. So and Julius Caesar, of course. So would highly recommend everyone read that. And interestingly, wasn't until after we decided to do it, but it really is hard to find a decent edition of Plutarch at a reasonable price. So actually, when push comes to shove, this is probably the best way to invest your money in it if you are intending to put that on your bookshelf, which we highly encourage. I mean,
to me, like the tagline, "It was good enough for Shakespeare, so surely it's good enough for you," is like, come on, guys, it was good enough for Bill. But yes, thank you so much for your time, George. I appreciate that you had a limited window, so thank you for joining us and for contributing to the catalogue.
Really appreciate it. Not at all. Anytime. Really appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Nathan. Thanks for having me.
Cheers, George. So, Philip, I want to welcome you properly onto the show. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your kind of artistic literary practice, and we'll get to your actual your contribution afterwards.
Yes, so my name is Philip, as one can read, and I'm a vicar currently. So I'm striving for the pastoral ministry, and I like to write on the side. So I've written a novel, a fantasy novel, which is quite heavily inspired by The Lord of the Rings, as these things usually are if they're in the domain of fantasy. But Lord of the Rings was for me a gateway drug into classical literature, I think, and also into a deeper study and appreciation of the ancient languages, and as a result, our cultural heritage in the West, but I think one can say globally as well. So that's me. I'm someone who likes to read and write and study ancient, long forgotten dead things and try to use them for those of us who are still alive today.
Well, I guess I would add to that. I think one of the things I've read some of your works, and I think you say dead, but you find the life within them, and you represent that in a way that is faithful to a lot of the tradition, and is in keeping with, you mentioned Tolkien and let's say the Norse sagas and so on. But you don't just copy and imitate, you actually bring something fresh to it. And I'm thinking of the House of Noth, for example. You develop your own characterization and you blend things which I haven't found in other places. So I find, you have a distinctive voice in that, Philip.
Well, I'm very glad to hear that. Yeah, I sometimes speak in hyperbole, and sometimes I fall into the trap of phrasing things in a way that one might when trapped by modern philosophies, which I think are often very superficial in comparison to the ancient writings which have been addressed here already by our previous guest. And I'm very humbled to be put in the same catalog, because what I'm looking at here is very cool. I'm also a fan of the illustrations in a big way. So, and the ancient or the old illuminated manuscripts that have been brought back to life in a big way. That's also something that I like, which I try to bring into my work, is a kind of artistic, I don't know, maybe it's something like you were saying, that I draw on inspiration from the ancient things, which I also think in and of themselves aren't actually dead. I think spirits in a very fundamental kind of way are linked to words. And so if you understand ancient languages and the way they function, you are tapping into old spiritual movements and so on, which on the one hand can be dangerous, I would say, as a theologian of the Christian persuasion. But on the other hand, also can grant us deeper insights into the nature of the world in which we live and how it is woven together and maintained, I would say, by spiritual forces. So there's a deep wealth there that shouldn't be forgotten. And I'm very grateful to be placed alongside such giants who are cultivating that heritage in this very beautiful way. And beauty and truth and goodness are all very closely related to one another. So I'm very glad of all of this.
Well, I think there's an interesting point that you've just made in terms of the power of language. And I know somebody like Wagner, or a lot of 19th century German romantics, they were interested in recovering a kind of primitive German, or the primordial German language, because they believed that kind of language, the words embodied or expressed the essence of the thing itself. The subject and the objective were blended together. So I don't know an exact example, but it would be like wind and breath were the same word, right? So and spirit as well, wind, breath, and spirit. So these tell you more that it's not just a cold scientific word for it. It's actually, and it's not just an emotive word. It's actually the two things are blended, so that when you're talking about your spirit, the connotations of breath are with that. But at the same time, when you're talking about breath, the connotations of spirit come with that. So it's much more powerful. And for Wagner, the way to recapture that was kind of bringing all the arts together in opera, so that you could reconvey that power within a modern context. And I suppose what I'm getting at is, in your works, I think you don't just write a story, and you don't just do the art, and you don't just do language and kind of think about language. You actually bring all of these things together in your storytelling. And I think that's quite a pronounced thing in your approach.
Yeah, well, I'm grateful that that is recognized. I think in some ways I fall into the trap of being a jack of all trades and a master of none. Or maybe I have a very lopsided character in my work because of that. Some things are very pronounced, and other things you can see the weaknesses in a way. But I do hope that it has a defined character that also is entertaining and meaningful enough to warrant attention.
Well, speaking of that, then why don't you tell us a little bit about A Loveless Lay?
Yes, A Loveless Lay was inspired by you, Nathan. So I'm very grateful for that, because it pushed me to dig a bit more earnestly into something that has, since my early childhood, been on the periphery of my inspiration field. So it is a poem that is about a story that takes place more in the latter days of Arthur's life, in which Guinevere and Lancelot are discovered to have had a love affair. And in my retelling of this particular section of the story, which I haven't found in any of the other texts, Arthur goes up into the mountains, away from Camelot, to get away from the courtly life and its lies and its webs and schemes and so on, up into the mountains, also a very religious place in ancient storytelling or old storytelling. And there he has the opportunity to wrestle not only with himself, but he also encounters a malevolent spirit, in this case, in the form of Merlin's remnant. And a conversation ensues that is fundamentally a meditation on power that is granted to people through the authority they have in their place as a ruler, in the case of Arthur. But I think it can be applied to any position of authority, and how that position is one which always leads one to wrestle with the question of, am I performing justice, or am I performing vengeance, a petty kind of vengeance for my own sake?
I mean, there's an inherent difficulty with the character of Arthur, I think, throughout the legends, which this kind of touches on, because he's both meant to be the ideal king, and so the ideal king is almost an impersonal force who delivers justice. He's a vessel for something which is beyond himself, and has to kind of remove himself from that process, or at least that's been kind of how it's been presented. And as such, he sits in Camelot, and it's his knights that go out on the adventures. It's them that have human emotion and passion and relationships and falls and rises. Arthur's meant to be this paragon which all things emanate from. But at the same time, he's a man who has a wife, who has friends, and does have relationships. And so balancing those two things, he almost falls in between them. And this is partly what leads to the various downfalls of his kingdom. Because if you take like Tennyson, for example, his presentation of Arthur is a man who didn't really show love to Guinevere. And this drives Guinevere towards Lancelot, who is a man who does show love for her. But Arthur, in a way, can't, because he has to be the king. He has to be above such things. So, yeah, is that kind of the sort of tension that you're exploring here?
I think so. There's, I find it very interesting, because Tennyson is very characteristically romantic in that way. And I think another inspiration for me was, I can't remember now if it was even, I don't think it was Chrétien de Troyes' version or telling of the story. I think it was, now his name escapes me, the main source, in a sense, for the story.
Thomas Mallory? Or
yes, Thomas Mallory's.
Thomas
Mallory's, yeah. Monmouth is also great, but one can tell that it's much older. But Mallory, I think in his telling of the story, there's a scene where Arthur falls in love with Guinevere, and then he employs Merlin to aid him to gain her hand in marriage. And Merlin warns him that she will essentially betray him. And so that, I think that also played a pivotal role in sort of planting the seeds for the way I told this part of the story, in that Merlin now re-emerges from the dead, essentially, because in this telling, he's already been seduced and then killed by the Lady of the Lake. And then Arthur is brought to confront the fact that Merlin I did tell you so, Merlin says, essentially. And Arthur then has to come to terms with that on the one hand, but he can, because he realizes he has a transcendent role to play, which is exactly like you say. He is this, as one also sees in the tellings, the various tellings of the story, especially in such retellings as Percival or Parsifal, the German version of the Arthurian legend, where he barely features. He's only a side character, and Parsifal is the protagonist who one follows.
So very, very briefly, Philip, what is next in line for you? What's in store with your writing in the future?
Well, I have been playing with the idea. So I like I have said, I'm a Tolkien fan, and I'm busy going through Tolkien's Beowulf, a prose version of his Beowulf story. And I've been thinking of doing a similar poetic retelling of an aspect of the story. And then I also am playing, because Tennyson was a big inspiration for me, and medievalism in general, English medievalism. So I do want to actually do a full retelling of the Arthurian legend and do something similar for Beowulf, because these sources are fascinating to me. But then in the long run, I also do want to write a much bigger sequel to the House of Noth. So if that sounds interesting to anyone, then they can also still listen to the House of Noth for free on my YouTube channel, or read it if they want to buy it on Lulu. Yes. So that is what I have planned.
Well, that is fantastic, and I'm very grateful for you making the time for joining us, Philip. And I wish you all the best in the future, and look forward to catching up again.
Yes, likewise. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. See you soon.
Goodbye.
So before we bring in our next guest, Shield Maiden, I believe you have an update on the sales of the Brink Catalogue.
Yes, a number have gone, about 5, which is excellent.
That is absolutely fantastic.
Basically, in England, we have a public holiday this coming Monday, so things will start to move in the post on Tuesday. So if anyone purchases anything over the weekend, it'll start moving Tuesday. And I did see earlier someone asked about the shipping times. The Royal Mail gives approximate shipping times, which you'll see reflected on Etsy. Obviously, things might arrive a bit quicker. I believe they give a time frame of 3 days. So things could arrive, on the dot, or they might arrive a bit earlier, or even a bit later in some cases. You know what the mail's like these days. But yeah, those are the guidelines. And of course, you can get in touch with me if you can either contact me on Etsy if you have an Etsy account, or teamcorncrake@gmail.com if something is awry. Just get in touch and I will be able to sort things.
Fantastic. Well, with that, let us bring in a good friend of the channel, an excellent thinker about culture, a great writer of stories, just a wonderful man. We have Mr. Alexander. Hello, Alexander. How are you doing?
Oh, yes, I'm doing well.
That is good to hear. That is good to hear. For those who don't know you, why don't you say a little bit about who you are and what your grand kind of projects are in
I'm glad you said projects. Yeah. So my name is Alexander Dalbini. I write a theology Substack called Tower of Adam, and I also write something called Anglo-Saxon Christianity. So Tales of Old England Christendom. And so if you want to go over there and have a little look, if you're interested in that kind of thing. I also started writing a little bit of fiction last year, and Shield Maiden was very, very kind and actually printed one of my stories about Adam and Eve and how the fairies came to be, which is actually based on a medieval tale. And I actually quite enjoyed it, which surprised me, because all I've been writing is cold, hard theology. And I'm starting to turn a bit of a C.S. Lewis here, but I've really enjoyed actually doing the fiction writing. And so I'm planning on writing a bit more. So watch out, Shield Maiden. I'll be sending you some more stuff soon. And also I'm an Anglo-futurist. And I was really chuffed to see that my little humble book has appeared in your magazine, Shield Maiden. Quite surprised by that. So thank you very much. But yeah, that's who I am. So pop along Substack. I'm also on Twitter as well, under Alexander Dalbini. And you can get all the latest Anglo-future craziness if you wish.
So why don't you unpack a little bit for us? What is Anglo-futurism?
Yeah, there's a very big question to that. Very big question mark. Yeah.
How long do you have? That I guess.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's a very big area. If you go online, you will see a podcast called Anglo-futurism, and it's the guys that run it are wonderful people, and it's a really good, fun, tongue-in-cheek look at trying to find ways to kickstart the UK economy, because it's not doing very well at the moment. And they'll talk about things like building loads and loads of nuclear power stations across the country to give us unlimited energy, or they'll talk about raising Dogger Bank in the North Sea and create a new island there. So it's quite exciting. But when I first came across it, which was last June, I saw that phrase Anglo-futurism, and I thought that is a very strange phrase to bring those two things together. So I'm coming at it from a philosophical lens rather than this economic idea or this technological idea. I'm kind of coming from a different angle, and I see it as quite an interesting dialectic, because you've got this Anglo, which is traditional English cultural heritage, Anglo cultural heritage, very traditional ways of doing things. We like our queuing, we like our fish and chips and stuff like that. We do love our Shakespeare and things like that. And then you've got this futurism, which is this crazy Italian ideology, which is all about energy and about noise and about machinery and the latest technology and about being crazy like crazy Italians. And futurism died out after World War II for obvious reasons, which you can find out for yourself. And I found it really interesting. It's been kind of resurrected, but it's got like this Anglo at the front. So the way that I kind of look at trying to resolve this paradox, because it is really a paradox, is I look at the whole idea and I see it as a way that we can go back into the past, so we can find like the treasured wisdom, the lost wisdom that we've kind of like just disregarded because it's medieval, for example, or it's just the stupid ancient people who didn't know anything, and we bring it forward and we try and find that wisdom. We bring it forward and try to see if we can use it to help us to not just kickstart the economy, but also kickstart our culture, because I think our culture is dying. And it's been really interesting to hear what people have been saying on the stream today, because everyone seems to be crying out for a new culture, and we need new things. The culture has literally been on recycle for the last 25 years, and now it's time for something new. And I've just got a little sneaky feeling that I think Anglo-futurism and the arts could be quite a good marriage. And I think we could use Anglo-futurism as a tool to kickstart some new ideas.
I guess what's interesting about that is where, a lot of this stream has been primarily focused on the arts and literature, focusing on them for obvious reasons. But with Anglo-futurism, that's in a broader cultural context, which incorporates other things and thus incorporates art and literature within a broader framework for how how we should see the world, how we should change our current reality, and so on.
Yeah, I think the book isn't really an art book, and this is why I was a little bit surprised it was included. But I think I can kind of understand why after listening to the stream and hearing what people are saying and the concerns that people have. The book isn't really academic. I wrote it purposely to be read by lay people who aren't in the academia world. And it comes across as a whole bunch of articles, which is right, because that's what it was. I wrote it on my Substack, and they're just simple little articles where I'm trying to explore what this Anglo-futurism thing looks like. So the way I kind of describe it is the book is like me pushing against the door of Anglo-futurism and just seeing what's actually inside. And I'm seeing this ideological landscape, which I think could be quite rich as we start to dig into it and to see what happens. I mean, at the moment, there's a few artists within Anglo-futurism. Both of them use AI art, so that could be quite shocking to some people here. But they're producing some really nice work and trying to understand what does Anglo-futurism mean to them, and I think that they've been pushing the door, and I think there's some interesting ideas that they're actually producing using the AI as a kind of a guide. But I need to also say that this isn't Anglo-futurism isn't like, oh, we'll just get AI to do everything. From the Anglo-futurist point of view, we would say that the AI is a tool. It's not to master us. It's not to like provide just cheap content, because who wants to watch something that an AI made? We need human connection. And one of the key parts of Anglo-futurism is putting the humanity back at the center of technology, rather than having the state at the center, ordering whatever processes that it wants to order, but actually having us at the center.
I mean, that is so important, because we have definitely lost a human touch. And I would argue well before AI was around, we'd lost that human touch in life. It was even the way we think about things, that it has to be rationally ordered. Now, I'm not saying there isn't a place for reason, but the idea we can map everything with reason and have a plan which has every possibility sorted, well, that's ludicrous. But the very attempt to do so often leads to massive flaws being in place which can't be handled. Whereas when you allow for the space for the human, for passion, for the heart, you allow space to be more adaptive and in tune with reality, to go with it rather than be rigid in your approach to it. So I think that's absolutely vital, and a strong connection then between what's in the catalogue and what's at the heart of Anglo-futurism.
Yeah, I think I do like what you said there, and I think we always have to be aware that one of the problems with technology, it creates abstraction, and it pulls us away from reality. And I think what art does, good art brings us back to reality. And so one of some of the guys at the Anglo-futurism Institute, yes, there's an institute. It's small, but it's growing. We've been discussing how we can strategically move forward, and one of the ways that we've realised is that you need to use the arts. And even though we might see some of the materials that have been presented today, we might not think they're Anglo-futurist, but I think actually maybe some of them are, because particularly I'm loving the books where they're resurrecting the old books and produce them in a beautiful way. In some ways, that's kind of Anglo-futurism. It's like bringing forward some of the lost books, some of the lost knowledge, and presenting it today, and selling it online. That's almost like Anglo-futurism in some way. But I think that there's definitely, it's a new movement, and there's scope for so much, and it affects a wide range, not just the arts, but obviously technology, education, policing, politics, culture. It can affect a lot of other areas, this little simple dialectic. But I'm really excited that I think the starting point that we've identified is the arts. It's really important.
Vitally so, vitally so. And I guess one further question to that then is you've mentioned that there are some artists who are working in the Anglo-futurist movement / institute. What further kind of artistic possibilities do you see with Anglo-futurism? Is there certain ideas, images, styles which come to your mind in terms of? I'm not trying to limit it. I just mean in terms of, is there things which naturally you've been thinking, oh, that would be a good fit?
I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, I have my own personal preferences towards art, but one thing I've found really interesting is one of our artists, a lady called Raina. She produced this image using AI, which is half the image is like an old English village, and the other half of the image is far future, like far future London or something. But the way that the two images are connected, they kind of merge and merge into each other. And I think she kind of came up with the idea, had a chat with me, and then she produced the art using the AI tools. And I don't know, I think that kind of sums it. It's kind of like sums it up in some way. We've also got lots of red squirrel imagery all over the place for the Anglo-futurists.
You love your red squirrels as a sphere. I've noticed this. Everybody has a version of a squirrel of some kind. It's like a red squirrel uprising.
Yes, it is. Well, as you know, the red squirrels are rising up. They're rising up against the greys. And I think it was a sign that, our culture isn't dead. The English culture, the Anglo culture isn't dead. It is there, and I think as people show more love to it, it will grow. One thing I said last year is that England needs more love, and in Anglo-futurism, I actually wrote a chapter called "Selfless Love," and it's one of my favourite chapters in the book because it actually recognises that structures built on power, they fail very, very quickly over time. You look at something like the Soviet Union. But structures that are based on people who are willing to sacrifice their lives to keep it going can last for eternity. And I think that's the heart of Anglo-futurism is love. It's selfless love. And it sounds maybe a bit twee, but I think actually if we love our culture, it will come back.
Well, I think that's a very beautiful, and I wanted to make a further connection on that, because when you look at so Tolkien, one of the things he writes about in his essay on fairy stories is that many of us become over familiar with the things around us. We take them for granted. We maybe exploit them. We just see them as something to help us achieve another end. They become a mere instrument, or we box them in and we lose a sense of wonder with them. And implicit in his kind of response to that of recovery is that the only way to truly appreciate something is to love it. It's through loving it that you really see the whole of it. And so this ties in with the kind of aesthetic attitude as outlined by Kant or Schopenhauer, that it's an attitude where you're not trying to possess or control or use the thing before you. You, in a way, you're just letting it be and observing it. You're allowing it to be without any of your own interest being at play, your own desire being at play. And so to me, that kind of love that you're talking about for England is the very same thing which leads to the creation of art, leads to the creation of stories, leads to the creation of music. So I think very, very naturally it's going to produce creativity, that love that you feel needs to be at the heart of Anglo-futurism.
Yep, I think you're definitely right there, Nathan. I think you're right there.
Well, on that then, as time's moving quickly,
Yep.
what's next in store for you, Alexander?
Right. So I am writing some more fairy tales. I love writing fairy tales. So I'm hoping to get something published in the summer. And then on the Anglo-futurism side, I'm writing a second, more philosophical book on it. I'm trying to land the whole project. So we're looking at culture and politics and developing policy. So it's going to be quite an interesting landing to see how that plays out, because at the moment, Anglo-futurism, you know, we had an article in the Critic magazine about Anglo-futurism recently saying, what the hell is it? You know, and I think we need to start saying, well, it's not just this high-minded stuff, this dialectic or whatever. It's actually something quite grounded as well. So that's the second part of the project. And then I'm hoping to write an Anglo-futurism novel at some point. And as you know, Nathan, I write a lot of words. So I'm hoping to get that out later in the year as well. So we'll see.
Well, that's absolutely fantastic, and fingers crossed it can appear in next year's catalogue as well. Thank you so much for your time, Alexander. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you contributing to the catalogue, and it's been great to have this discussion, and all the best for your future endeavours.
Thank you very much, Nathan. Very much enjoyed it, and thank you to Shield Maiden as well.
Cheers, pal. Have a good
bye.
evening. So, while we're waiting on our final guest, Shield Maiden, I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about one thing which is advertised in the catalogue, and you have to go to the very back page to find the Corncrake magazine, nesting in the oak of English literature. Do you want to say a little bit about what this is?
Yes, this is the only thing advertised in the catalogue you can't physically purchase a copy of yet. It is my goal this year to have the Corncrake printed, but for now, it is here. If more people read, obviously there's more interest, and then it can move on to the printing stage faster. So I thought, plus, you know, you need a back cover, and these screaming Corncrakes look ideal.
Oh, they are a magnificent chorus. We heard them at the beginning of this stream. And
yes.
What is the Corncrake magazine all about? What's in it?
Well, as it says in the title, English literature, but, however, in addition, there is art. But the kind of literature is it is always printed in English, obviously. But yeah, there's a variety to it. Some people, some of the authors are American or Canadian, and obviously those cultures evolved from England. And then there's some things that are a bit more continental, but I would say the majority of this is, obviously it's all written in English, it's centered around England. I mean, most of the world's best authors, let's be honest, come from England. So I never want for stories. They're all there. Everything. I think it would be hard pressed if I were running this catalogue from some other country, but England is the ideal place to, you know, have the magazine centered around. Now that I have a magazine and a catalogue on my website, I'm going to be mixing those two words up.
You definitely are, especially as they're going to be both hopefully in print in the future as well. Speaking of, so just to reiterate for those joining the stream, the catalogue is now live. You can either go to the corncrakemag.com, where you can see a digital copy of the see, I'm doing it now. You can see a digital copy of the catalogue for free. You just click on the image of the catalogue and you're straight into it. Or you can go to the Etsy shop for the Corncrake mag, where you can purchase a print edition of the catalogue. And this is for the wonderful, perfect deal of £5 English. £5 English. that is an exquisite deal for this catalogue. I think hopefully the high quality nature of it has been coming across throughout.
I think that's about $7 or $8 US.
Yes. I mean, these days, how much could you actually buy with that, which is good compared to this? Not much, I imagine. So that shows how good a deal this is. In terms of then the catalogue next year, because I've kind of been hinting at it, and you've mentioned already, but maybe it'd be good just to reiterate. If people are interested in being part of a future catalogue, how should they reach out to you about that?
Yes, definitely. The general rule is, and this is an approximate rule, not enforced with the fist or the hammer, but basically things within the last year, especially if it's literature. If a person's making posters, it's a bit different, but with books themselves, generally speaking, if it's published within the last year, and doing things like if you make a new, sometimes authors make a new version of their book, whatever you call that, your new edition, that counts as a new book. So if you get a new cover on your book, that sort of thing is fine. So yeah, just you can always reach out and ask, because depending on what a person's situation is, there might be things that they can set up that will prepare them for the best portrayal in the catalogue. Like some of the people in the catalogue, you can only reach out to them via email to ask about their products. But obviously you might find that having an online store or website or that might work better, but also it's good as well if people have, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of social media. I would like it to be phased out in due course, but yes, having a place that people can go online and even see the work, even if you don't have an Etsy or your own website where you sell things. Yeah, being able to see the work on a social media or something is really good.
I guess though that's a second kind of requirement, is that it's something which is for sale. So it's not just showing work; it's actually work that somebody could purchase. And
physical. Yeah, and physical. Like one of the men who does the illumination, Tintern Binary, if I'm even saying it right, at this time of night. They have, I believe there's advertised one downloadable thing, but it's actually a colouring book that you download and you give to your kids once you print it out. So that's like skipped through and made the cut. But if someone were only selling PDF files or they were asking for commissions, those kind of things is not what the catalogue is about. It's for things that actually exist in the real world, away from screens and technology.
Absolutely. And in terms of the scope then, because I think one of the things that's been striking is there's a wide variety of forms. When we say art and literature, in terms of art, that can be it's not just paintings, right? It can be a whole range of things that come under that.
Yeah, there's a lot of posters in here. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of people who've done that, and then they're selling posters, and of course, T Meadows cards here, Pharaoh's coats, like those things as well are not art in the traditional, I guess the first thing that comes to mind when you talk about art, but they are made, I mean, both of these men are artists, and then they've made something out of it. Yeah, things need to be artistic to be art. But it wouldn't matter if someone had ran an Etsy shop and they sold pottery. I mean, to me, that counts as art. So I would have no problem advertising that.
I think that's the thing. If you have a question and you want to be involved, reach out to Shield Maiden and you'll get an answer. But with that, let me introduce our final guest of the evening. It is somebody who I'm a great admirer of, who I think many of us follow in this sphere for his insights into not just the current state of writing, but also the art of it. It is Mr. Isaac Young. Hello, Isaac. How are you doing, sir?
Whoop, was muted there. Sorry. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. We're delighted to have you, and we're very grateful for your time. Before we kind of get into the specific book that you've contributed to the catalogue, do you want to say a little bit about yourself and your writing?
Hi, so I'm Isaac Young. I'm primarily on Twitter and Substack. I do a lot of cultural commentary on just the degradation of pop culture. And I would say I focus primarily on strategies and methods and ways of trying to generate a parallel or alternative culture to what we currently have. Then I also write a lot of science fiction and fantasy. The Domes of Calrathia, which is the one in the catalog, is my newest post-apocalyptic dark fantasy book. I have two others that I'm hoping to get published this year. The first one is Giga Heroes, which is my own take on superheroes from a more right-wing perspective. And then finally, The Last Human, which is a space opera set very far into the future. And I'm currently launching as an audio show on YouTube and other podcast platforms this May.
So you're a very busy man in the next few months, by the sounds of it.
Yep.
But that's fantastic. And I guess one question I have is, and we've spoken a little bit about this before. A lot of mainstream fantasy and sci-fi feels very dead, in part because it's just pastiches, copies, imitations, poor imitations of forms which have been sucked of their essence and turned into just a veneer, a skin suit for the latest ideology. So, but possibly as well because there are, it seems that the Lord of the Rings and D&D have captured all of fantasy in a way in terms of the imagination of it. And so very few writers are kind of branching out beyond them in terms of the tools that they're using. So how do you kind of situate your own writing within that kind of context?
Well, I would say, actually, I don't think Lord of the Rings has really captured the imagination of fantasy, but rather the skin suit version of Lord of the Rings, which is far more, I think, Dungeons and Dragons fault. Because if only modern writers took the best parts of Lord of the Rings and copied them. But no, what they saw immediately was, all right, we're going to turn elves, orcs, and dwarves into their most hollowed out versions where, dwarves actually have a place in folklore. But instead of drawing from that, they just looked at the Peter Jackson movies essentially and said, dwarves are a short guy with beards with Scottish accents. Elves have lost all their transcendental context and just become pretentious people with pointy ears. And then orcs, the funniest example, have become an analogy for colored people. And you can see this in the latest Rings of Power Rings of Power seasons, where it's kind of reached its ultimate skin suit form, where these fantasy races, which they weren't meant to be analogous to real races, but now we've just taken diversity and shoved it into Lord of the Rings, or at least modern connotations of race into Lord of the Rings. So as far as where I stand in this landscape, I'm trying my best to figure out a way to escape the zeitgeist in a way, because I feel like the main thing that hobbles most writers is all their writing is so distinctly modern that it just sucks you out of the story. You have characters who are spotting off gender ideology from 2025 in far-flung fantastical settings. Like, for some reason, every story nowadays feels like it was written in current year. And the problem is current year is extremely fake and just insufferable. And so I try to get away from that as much as possible in my writing.
How do you do that then in terms of your writing? Is it leaving behind every kind of current political consideration and just thinking about a story kind of stripped of that politics, or is it in a different way?
So I employ a variety of tactics. For Domes of Calrathia, I took alternative inspirations. So let's say for tropes, for example, like every fantasy story is elves, dwarves, yada, yada, yada. And they become extremely hollowed out to the modern reader. So I was like, all right, I'm going to put all those standard tropes aside. I'm not going to employ any traditional fantasy races in this story. And I'm going to do my best to use alternative, lesser known tropes. And I'm going to draw upon lesser known sources for inspiration. So for example, like in the creatures in the Domes of Calrathia, one of them is called an anemoi. And that's a real phrase that's from Greek mythology, which means a wind spirit. And I'm betting most people aren't going to recognize that off the cuff. And so it's still drawing from tradition, but it's drawing from something that, readers probably, unless they have a good knowledge of the background sources of Domes of Calrathia, that they're not going to pick up on. And I'm hoping this sort of restores some of the mystique to the setting or to fantasy stories, because you read a modern book and you have elves, dwarves, and you already know what to expect from before you read the first page. And so that's one tactic. Second one is I try not to, and this is a problem with a lot of right-wing stories, is they try to bash current year wokeism. There was recently a very good thread by Aristophanes and Zero H.P. Lovecraft on this, where they were talking about, it's good that you're trying to oppose this, but right-wing propaganda is just as bad as left-wing propaganda. And you shouldn't you shouldn't try to, do your own thing, but it's propaganda. Because the advantage the left has over the right is that they can make extremely well-funded propaganda, and they can make propaganda with all the major IPs and franchises that are already beloved. And so they can come in with this institutional clout and get away with it. Whereas, you're probably an anon on some platform and you make propaganda, people are just going to do away with you altogether, because they're just not going to have the patience for it.
If you're going to do propaganda, at least do it well, I suppose. I can see that, and I think just kind of commenting on your first approach, I think one of the very great things about fantasy is it reawakens us to realities which we've maybe become too familiar with, by kind of representing them in a mode which then reacquaints us with them. So the classic example, for example, is in the Lord of the Rings, you have Ents, which are trees who have a consciousness, a personality, who can speak to us about the life of trees. And this is something that Tolkien held very dearly, that trees have a life and they need to be recognized as having dignity as a consequence of this. So the fantastical helps us to see something in our own world in a new way. But when the form itself, such as elves, dwarves, and orcs, becomes too familiar, they lose that quality which gave them that magnificent power in the first place. So I can definitely see how appealing to, or drawing on other characters that haven't been so explored can kind of reintegrate that into modern fantasy.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different tips and tricks that I can give you. There's a third one which I highly recommend. Just people should read older authors and try to mimic their style, because nowadays everything modern today that's written, it has this lisp to it, where it's always very ironic, wink at the camera, Marvel style humor.
Hmm.
Whereas if you go back to older works, they wrote very sincerely, and they utilize a much more complex form of language. Because you notice this as you go back, and I was particularly astounded by Edgar Allan Poe, is he used a vocabulary which is much greater than the modern reader would probably be equipped for. Because even I had some difficulty in just, I had to go search up what a particular word meant. And it's this interesting thing where it seems like the color of the English language is slowly being bleached out as time goes on, as we move on into a post-literate society.
So tell us a little bit about the Domes of Calrithia.
So it's a mixture of post-apocalyptic sci-fi and dark fantasy. I was reading Gene Wolfe's book, The New Sun, and I was particularly inspired by it. And I was struck with an image of my own image of a pilgrim wandering a frozen landscape filled with lost technology and dark monsters. And that was sort of the picture I had when I went into just writing the first chapter of that story. And then as I slowly built on it and trying to figure out, what I want to be the ideas of my story, I wanted to deal with themes of honor, particularly because every character you see nowadays is an oath breaker of some kind. I wanted to tell a story of a person who actually keeps to his oaths, especially romantically speaking. Because nowadays, I don't think I've read a single story about a knight warrior figure who doesn't basically fornicate. I haven't encountered that, and it's all over in A Song of Ice and Fire. I think Eddard Stark's the only one who keeps his honor, but he still has to lie to keep his honor. And I wanted to move back to a more sincere implementation of that trope. And then there's a whole host of other religious elements that I used to flesh out the setting. I took inspirations from scripture to delve into what the faith aspects of this world might look like. Because it's a very difficult thing to try to implement some form of Christianity into a story without people immediately accusing it as being like Ned Flanders' nice Christianity. So that was something I was trying to do, was implement a more primal and vivid and actually dangerous form of Christianity as the religion actually is, instead of this very tame, domesticated version that we see in the world nowadays.
That sounds absolutely fantastic. And you've already mentioned that you have a few future publications coming out that people can, I guess they can go find that on your Amazon page in the future. In terms of the scene or the sphere in general, what would you like to see moving forward, and how do you see this catalogue is contributing to that?
Well, I wrote a thread 1 or 2 days ago. I think Corncrakes is doing some extremely valuable work, because we have a lot of artists on the right wing right now. We actually have a plethora of good artists to choose from. What we don't have right now, and what's especially important in my view, are tastemakers. People who can filter out all the other noise to look at what's really important and highlighting what's going on in the scene, because that's the main problem with what indies have, is they have plenty of vision, and I would argue plenty of talent. But the problem with the marketplace is it's so saturated, it's so crowded, everyone's trying to move their own product, that it's become impossible for the right, especially since we lost institutions that were designed to select for high quality art. It's become impossible for the right to basically cultivate a scene, because they have no idea who to go to. And so I think Corncrakes doing incredibly valuable work in this regard, because they're doing work which I don't think a lot of other people have really picked on yet.
Well, that sounds like a great vision for the future, and maybe a clarion call for not just the Corncrake and the Catalogue, but for others in our sphere to be thinking about that. I have a question from the chat from Ben Wheeler, aka Pinkerton's Ghost. He asks whether you've read Nightlands by William Hope Hodgson or Awake in the Nightland by John C. Wright.
Unfortunately, not. Sadly, I recently picked up a H.P. Lovecraft book, Trigon, and was that Empire? I can't. It's by Christopher Root. Oh, let me see if I can find him. It's like Empire of Stars or something. Or Sun Eater series. Yeah, those are my next 3 conquests. In terms of, I've read Lovecraft before, but is one major short story, Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath, is something that I haven't finished, much to my shame, and so I'm trying to finally conquer that one.
Well, that sounds like an excellent endeavor, and with that in mind, I won't hold you on any longer. I really value your time, Isaac. It's great to have you involved and supporting this catalogue, and we wish you all the best with your future publications as well.
Yep. Thank you so much.
Cheers, mate. Bye for now. So that brings us towards the end of the stream. Shield Maiden, is there anything you would like to say in the way of closing?
Yes, buy the catalogue, or at least check it out on the website to support the artists. Feel free to follow their social medias and so on. And yeah, check out the Corncrake mag while you're at it too, because that's doing a similar thing, as in it's putting different authors' short stories and some of their art in it as well. So yeah, and I am grateful for everyone's support. Because, obviously I've got a lot of support, which is why I can, do the catalogue.
Absolutely. We're very grateful for everybody who's contributed and into the catalogue, to those who have taken part in this stream, and to all of you who have been watching, for giving your time and attention to it. We really hope that you get a lot out of this. I know for myself that I was fortunate enough to have my own printed copy of it, and I've just really enjoyed the last couple of days just flicking through it. It's an absolute joy, and to feel like we're at the start of something big is very exciting. And once again, I just want to say a massive thank you and congratulations to you, Shield Maiden. This is a great contribution, and I hope it's the first of many. I really do. Well, thank you everybody for joining, and yes, go and look at the catalogue, go and buy it, and you will see us around soon. Good night, everyone. Bye for now.